Since the very beginning of time, when Allah created our father Adam, there were other creations that had existed before him. Among these was a being who would become the embodiment of arrogance, jealousy, and enmity, the entity we now refer to as Iblees. From the moment Iblees laid eyes on Adam, he was overcome with an uncontrollable, deep-seated jealousy and an irrational hatred. This enmity was not just a fleeting feeling. Rather, it was an eternal grudge that led Iblees to declare himself as the sworn adversary, not only of Adam, but of his wife Hava, and every single descendant of theirs until the end of time. The level of irrational anger and enmity that Iblees harbored was unprecedented among creation. He was consumed by his own arrogance, blinded by his pride, and overcome with an insatiable need to prove himself superior. Allah, in his infinite wisdom and mercy, warned us about this enemy from the very start. As soon as Iblees rebelled, Allah narrated his story to us in the Qur'an, so that we would never be heedless of his plots. Allah tells us that Iblees, in his defiance, directly challenged Allah, saying, "Do you see this one whom you have honored above me? If you delay my time until the day of judgment, I will surely misguide his entire progeny, all except a few of them." Iblees did not merely accept his own downfall, rather, he sought to drag as many of Adam's children with him as possible. But it was not just his hatred for Adam that drove him. His arrogance was so profound that he even dared to blame Allah for his own misguidance. Instead of humbling himself and seeking forgiveness, he turned his anger toward his Creator and said, "My Lord, because you have led me astray, I will surely sit and wait for them on your straight path. Then I will approach them from the front, from behind, from their right, and from their left hand. You will find most of them ungrateful." Such was his deep-rooted malice. He did not simply vow to mislead people passively. Rather, he swore to actively block their path to Allah at every turn. He would not rest. He would wait in anticipation, ready to attack when they were most vulnerable. He would ensure that most of them would fail to express gratitude to their Creator. The first warning, Allah in his boundless mercy, did not leave Adam and Hava unaware of this lurking enemy. As soon as they entered Jannah, Allah explicitly warned them, "O Adam, indeed this being is your enemy and the enemy of your wife. So do not let him expel you from paradise, for you would then suffer." The warning was clear and direct. Allah pointed out Iblees and cautioned them against his deceitful nature. Yet, despite this warning, Iblees succeeded in leading them astray through his cunning deception. And when Adam and Hava were sent down to earth, the warning did not cease. Rather, Allah reiterated it, reminding them that Iblees would continue to be a source of great fitna, trial, for them and their children. Allah commanded Adam to warn his descendants to teach them about this sworn enemy so that they would never fall into his traps. And so throughout human history, prophet after prophet was sent to reinforce this warning, to remind humanity of the dangers of Iblees and to guide them back to the straight path. And on the day of judgment, Allah himself will remind mankind, "O children of Adam, did I not command you not to follow Shaytan? Did I not tell you that he is your clear enemy?" Notice how, at every major stage of human existence, Allah has continuously warned us about this adversary. It is not something to be taken lightly, nor is it something to be ignored. Who is Shaytan? The word Shaytan is not actually a proper name, it is a description. It refers to anyone who is rebellious and obstinate, anyone who seeks to misguide others away from the path of Allah. There are many Shaytaan, devils, both from the jinn and from humankind, but there is only one Iblees. He is the leader of all Shaytaan, the master manipulator, the deceiver who has vowed to lead mankind astray. Why did Allah create Iblees? A common question arises, why would Allah create such an evil being? Why allow a creature whose sole mission is to spread corruption and misguidance? The answer to this question requires a deep understanding of the purpose of our existence. Many people assume that life should be free from struggle, that there should be no trials, no difficulties, no evil, only peace and comfort. But this is not the nature of this world. This world is a test, a temporary stage, a means to earn the eternal bliss of the hereafter. The reality is that true peace, free from evil and suffering, is reserved for Jannah. But in this dunya, we are meant to strive, to struggle against temptation, to overcome the challenges placed before us. And part of that struggle is resisting the whispers of Iblees. The wisdom behind the existence of Iblees. Great scholars such as Ibn al-Qayyim have discussed the wisdom behind the existence of Iblees. In his famous works, he dedicates entire chapters to explaining why Allah allowed Iblees to remain. He mentions several profound points, some of which include the purification of the righteous. True piety and righteousness are only manifested when there is something to struggle against. If there were no temptations, no evil to resist, then righteousness would be meaningless. It is through overcoming the trials of Iblees that the true believers distinguish themselves. Evil is personified. If evil were simply an abstract concept, it would be much harder to recognize and combat. But by having it personified in Iblees, we can clearly see what is wrong and whom to oppose. And the key lesson here is that Iblees is not a god, nor is he invincible. He is merely a creation of Allah, just like us. The importance of contrast. We appreciate goodness by witnessing its opposite. Just as light is only valued when contrasted with darkness and health is cherished after illness, goodness becomes more meaningful when we see the depths of evil. A psychological benefit. When we sin, we often feel overwhelming guilt and despair. But Allah has given us an outlet. We can blame Iblees for his whispers. This does not remove personal responsibility, but it allows us to recognize that our true nature is not one of evil. We were created in a state of purity, and Iblees merely tries to corrupt that purity. The tactics of Shaytan. Shaytan has many strategies, but among his most common methods are forgetfulness, making us delay or neglect our obligations; whispering waswas, placing sinful thoughts into our minds; false beautification, tazyin, making sins appear attractive and harmless; fear-mongering, making us afraid to give charity, afraid to trust in Allah. These are just a few of his countless tactics. He adapts to each person's weaknesses, using whatever method is most effective. Conclusion. Iblees is an ancient enemy, one who has been deceiving mankind since the very first generation. But Allah has given us the tools to protect ourselves. Through seeking knowledge, remaining steadfast in worship, and constantly seeking refuge in Allah, we can overcome his whispers and earn our place in Jannah. May Allah protect us from the deception of Iblees and keep us firm upon his path. Ameen. The deceptive tactics of Shaytan and how to protect ourselves. At times, you may come across individuals whose eloquence leaves you mesmerized. Their speech captivates, their intellect seems unmatched, and you might even believe they possess profound wisdom. However, true intelligence is not determined by how well one can articulate ideas or how many degrees they have acquired. If a person has not yet understood the very purpose of their existence, then no amount of academic achievement or material wealth can make them truly wise. No matter how high their income or how esteemed their status, if they remain unaware of the reason for which they were created, then all their success is ultimately meaningless. The danger of falling for deception. We must remain vigilant and not allow ourselves to be deceived by the whispers of those who, knowingly or unknowingly, act as agents of Shaytan. There are people who tirelessly promote ideologies designed to mislead. They present arguments that appear attractive, philosophies that seem intellectually appealing, and alternative ways of thinking that directly oppose Islam. But these are merely the beautifications of falsehood tricks used to lure believers away from the path of truth. This is among the most cunning tactics of Shaytan. One of the most significant dangers of our time is the widespread effort to distort reality, making falsehood appear as truth and truth appear as falsehood. Be mindful of this deception, for it is a trap laid out by Shaytan to ensnare the unwary. He has always worked in this manner. He embellishes sins, normalizes wrongdoing, and convinces people that obeying their desires is synonymous with freedom. This has always been his approach, and it remains one of his most successful strategies. The greatest fitna, disunity among the Ummah. Among the clearest and most destructive tactics of Shaytan is his attempt to create division within the Ummah. He seeks to sever the ties that bind us, to make us turn against one another, and to instill hatred where there should be love and unity. Allah mentions in the Qur'an that Shaytan's plan is to create enmity and discord between people. Just as he caused conflict between the brothers of Prophet Yusuf, leading them to plot against him, Shaytan continues to sow division among families, communities, and even entire nations. Why does he do this? Because he knows that when we are united, we are strong, but when we are divided, we are weak and vulnerable. The stronger our bond as a community, the harder it becomes for Shaytan to mislead us. This is why he relentlessly strives to create misunderstandings, disputes, and resentment between family members, friends, and neighbors. He fuels arguments, inflates egos, and makes us focus on petty grievances instead of the bigger picture. One of Shaytan's greatest victories is breaking up marriages and destroying families. The Prophet Muhammad informed us that the dearest achievement of Shaytan is to cause a husband and wife to separate. This is because marriage is the foundation of a stable society. When families are broken, the entire structure of the community begins to crumble. The effects of sin on society. Shaytan not only promotes division but also encourages sins that further drive people apart. Allah tells us in the Qur'an that Shaytan wants to entice people into drinking alcohol and gambling. Why? Because these acts lead to animosity, disputes, and broken relationships. How many friendships have been ruined because of gambling debts? How many families have been torn apart because of alcoholism? These are not just personal sins. They have a ripple effect that impacts entire societies. Every time you witness conflict within a community, every time a relationship is severed due to ego or arrogance, every time a person distances themselves from their family, know that Shaytan is rejoicing. He celebrates our failures and takes pleasure in our suffering. This is why we must always be on guard and resist his influence at every turn. Practical steps to protect ourselves from Shaytan. Knowing that Shaytan is our sworn enemy, we must actively take steps to shield ourselves from his deception. There are several powerful ways to fortify ourselves against his influence. 1. Sincerity in worship, ikhlas. The first and most crucial step is to purify our intentions and seek the pleasure of Allah alone. If our goal in life is to gain the approval of people, we will always be susceptible to Shaytan's manipulation. However, if our only concern is pleasing Allah, then we have already built a powerful barrier against his whispers. Shaytan himself admitted this when he said in the Qur'an that he will mislead most of humanity except for those who are sincerely devoted to Allah. He acknowledges that he has no power over those who worship Allah with true sincerity. Therefore, every time we purify our intentions and seek only the pleasure of our Creator, we are actively weakening Shaytan's grip on us. 2. Constant remembrance of Allah. Dhikr. One of the most effective ways to protect ourselves is by keeping our tongues moist with the remembrance of Allah. Dhikr serves as a shield, a spiritual force field that repels the attacks of Shaytan. The Prophet Muhammad informed us that when Surah Al-Baqarah is recited in a home, Shaytan does not enter it. This is a simple yet powerful defense. Just as we install security alarms in our homes to protect against thieves, we must fortify our homes against Shaytan by regularly reciting the Qur'an. Even if we cannot recite an entire surah in one sitting, we should make it a habit to recite at least a few verses daily. Likewise, the adhan serves as a powerful deterrent against Shaytan. When the call to prayer is announced, Shaytan flees. Imagine the impact of calling the adhan in our homes regularly. How many problems could be avoided? How much peace could be brought into our households? 3. Seeking refuge in Allah. Allah commands us in the Qur'an that whenever we feel the whispers of Shaytan, we should immediately seek refuge in him. Whenever we feel anger taking over, when we feel tempted towards sin, or when negative thoughts enter our minds, we must say, A'udhu billahi min ash-shaytan ir-rajim. I seek refuge in Allah from the accursed Shaytan. Shaytan has no power over those who consistently seek Allah's protection. 4. The power of Bismillah. Simply saying Bismillah before doing anything creates a barrier that Shaytan cannot cross. If we say Bismillah before entering our homes, Shaytan cannot enter with us. If we say Bismillah before eating, he cannot partake in our food. If we say Bismillah before changing our clothes, he cannot see us. Even before intimacy between spouses, mentioning Allah's name prevents Shaytan from interfering. 5. Strengthening our faith through worship. Regular acts of worship, such as praying on time, fasting, giving charity, and maintaining a connection with the masjid, build a fortress around us that Shaytan cannot easily penetrate. The Prophet Muhammad described worship as a protective shield, safeguarding believers from the influence of Shaytan. 6. Surrounding ourselves with righteous company. Shaytan preys on those who isolate themselves from the Muslim community. The Prophet warned us that just as a lone sheep is more vulnerable to a wolf, a solitary believer is more vulnerable to Shaytan. Staying connected with the masjid, attending Islamic gatherings, and having pious friends help protect us from falling into sin. Final thoughts. Do not fall for Shaytan's excuses. On the day of judgment, Shaytan will give a speech to his followers in hell. He will tell them, "I had no authority over you. I did not force you to follow me. I merely invited you, and you accepted my invitation. So do not blame me, blame yourselves." Let us not be among those who fall for his deception. Instead, let us rise to the noble station that Allah created us for, fortify ourselves against Shaytan's attacks, and remain steadfast in our journey towards Jannah. May Allah protect us from the traps of Shaytan and guide us towards righteousness. Ameen.